In today's video, I want to give you 10 years of honest fat loss advice. So if you're trying to cut weight, you probably feel like you've tried everything, but nothing seems to work. Why are you not losing this fat? You may be confused about where to start, what to do. So I want to share with you the best things that I've learned and picked up after coaching people for over 10 years. So quickly about my background, I used to work in Hollywood doing stunts, commercials, and TV shows like Ninja Warrior. Then we got to training others, health coaching, and then we were hosting massive Get Fit challenges where we had thousands of people join. And now I run a company that does one-on-one coaching for people like you to lose weight and move better. And that's what this new channel is for. And so over the 10 years of doing this, you really get to see the different myths that come out, that come and go, what works, what doesn't, and then what to expect. Because a lot of people, I think it's because of online and the marketing aspect of it, most people expect completely different results than reality. So by the end of this video, you're gonna have my best advice for losing that fat and also keeping it off. All right, let's do this. The myth of consistent weekly fat loss. So don't expect every week to go like this, where you're losing a bunch of weight every single week, and no matter what, it's just gonna go up like this. It's actually gonna go more like this. So it's not going to be linear here, because here's what you should expect. So at the very beginning, you're going to lose more than probably any other week or anything like that, just because at the very beginning, you're going to be losing water and glycogen in the body. So you're going to see a pretty big drop at the initial start of your diet and weight loss program. Then it'll probably level out a little bit, where you're going to see a little bit of consistent weight loss, and then your body starts to adjust. Not only because you're losing the mass, so now you don't need as many calories, you're also going to have metabolic adaptation. I shot a whole video on this, but basically the body works to hold on to your fat and weight. And it does things in the background like telling you not to move as much. Your organs actually shrink a little bit. So you're going to experience this metabolic adaptation. So at that point, you're going to stop losing weight, but also mentally. And that's because you're not a robot. It's tough to sustain rapid fat loss for long periods of time without burnout. So you have that combination where you're going to see, once you hit that, you're going to stop losing weight. So here's what you should expect. On average, 1 to 2 pounds a week is a good goal, and that's average throughout the week. So what we say is, if you're hitting that 1 to 2 pounds, that's great. So 1 week, if you don't lose any weight, but then the next week you lose a pound, we're still on track. The only time we need to adjust is, let's say you do 2 weeks where we don't see any movement, or maybe even start to gain a little weight. Then we start to adjust the diet and exercise a little more, especially with the diet. And also for most of us, we're gonna need to take breaks and things like this. So this is what you should expect, not a linear graph of just losing weight every week, but it's going to go like this. And that's completely normal and completely fine. That's a healthy, sustainable way to cut the fat and do this long term. And this goes into the next one. Don't live and die by the scale. Many people will wake up every morning, they weigh themselves, and if they don't see that scale go down, they think they're failing. But really, weight is just one metric that we need to follow. Other ones that are even better are photos and measurements. So getting measurements around your waist, around your legs, your arms, because muscle weighs more than fat. And many times people will start gaining muscle during the program, and they won't see the scale drop down. They may even stay the same weight, but their body looks way better. So the scale plays a trick on them. They think they're not getting results, when in reality, when they compare photos and measurements, they can see that they actually are getting really good results. For example, we had one client and she felt really down and depressed because the scale just wasn't moving. And this was, for a few weeks. And so she felt like it wasn't working anymore. But then when we looked at the before and after photos and the measurements, we had her do measurements again, we saw that the measurements improved. She'd lost inches around the waist. She looked more defined. So don't live and die by the scale. Incorporate these other measurements in our photos and things like this. This will give you better tracking of your overall results. You can't outrun a bad diet. And now, I've heard this so many times from friends and things like this, where they do a workout, a hard workout, and they say, okay, I did this hard workout. That means I can cheat a little bit on my diet. I'll be totally good. The problem with that is that you really just don't burn that many calories with exercise. So for example, if you're going to run 1 mile, and this is an estimate, people are slightly different, but you're going to burn around 100 calories. So what that means is that if you ate one Snickers bar, you'd have to run 3 miles just to burn that off. Now, exercise is still essential, so it's going to be really important for building muscle, to boost metabolism, and overall health, mental health, and everything else. So it is essential, and you need to be doing it. It's also going to help with the fat loss process. But diet is going to be a bigger factor when it comes to fat loss. If anything, you're probably better to miss the exercise portion if you have to, compared to diet versus exercise. For example, in our Primal Abs course, which I'll link down below, we don't even do any cardio. We do a simple ab routine because we want to build the core strength. We use a few unique exercises and a meditation routine to build not only the outer core, but the inner core, which you can check out in that program. And then we focus on diet. We use a fasting protocol to help lower the calories. It's something simple, easy to stick to, and that's worked really well for a lot of our clients. A calorie is not just a calorie, and I get so frustrated. Over the years, I've seen this, and I've heard people say this over and over. They beat you over the head with it. Calories in, calories out. It's all about calories. You can eat whatever you want. As long as you're eating the right amount of calories, you'll lose weight and you'll be good. That's all you need to worry about. And while part of that is true, the law of thermodynamics does exist where if you're eating less calories or less energy than what you're burning, then you're going to lose weight. However, when we eat food, it's not just the calories involved. We also have the micronutrients. And with all these processed foods and junk that we're eating today, there's all sorts of chemicals and things. And one of the things that really played into this was when the professor went on the Twinkie diet. I don't know if you've seen this, but Professor Mark Hobb went on a diet of only Twinkies just to prove the point that if you had your calories low, you could basically eat whatever you want and you'll lose weight. And he did. The problem is it disregards all the effects of everything else attached to those calories and the long-term effects. And finally, we have a study that proves this, and it proves this for fat loss. And this was done in 2025 at UCL. And the study, they did ultra-processed food versus minimally processed food. So not even like the full whole foods diet here. And what they did is they had 55 adults. They had them eat the meals for 8 weeks. And these were prepared meals for them, the same amount of calories. And here's what happened. Both of them lost weight, but the minimally processed diet lost almost twice as much. They had more fat loss, less digestive issues, and they felt less hungry, which is another big role. If you're eating these high sugary junk foods, you're going to be hungry all the time. And this wasn't even a long-term study. Just imagine the long-term effects of eating an ultra-processed diet. That's probably why we see, or one of the contributing factors to why we see these increases in diabetes, all these health problems. So don't fall into the myth that a calorie is just a calorie. There's other things involved in that calorie that will poison you or make your fat loss journey a lot harder. So we want to transition out of the ultra processed foods and try to get into the more whole food, natural foods. If you just did that, for most people, if they just cut out the ultra processed foods like the junk food, the Twinkies, candy bars, fast foods, and switch to whole foods like fruits, vegetables, lean meats, whole grains. Just by doing that, most people naturally start losing weight without even having to try and count calories, because they're getting in more nutrients, they're getting in more fiber that makes them feel fuller, they're getting more protein that makes them feel fuller. And so they're able to naturally restrict their calories without even having to think about it. Tracking is best for consistent and fast fat loss results. Now, going back to our last point, you can start without tracking. So just by switching to a whole foods diet or implementing intermittent fasting, that can work really well for a lot of people for starting out. So you could start with that if you wanted. So for example, Kenneth here, he went through our Primal Abs program where we try to focus more about switching to a whole foods diet. So it's just simple changes and then implementing the intermittent fasting, so without counting calories. And he was able to lose a lot of weight in a short amount of time. But if you want to ensure you get results, or if you've already gone through the first stage of weight loss and now you need to dial in even further, that's where tracking is going to be crucial. And the first thing you want to do is get an estimate of your total daily energy expenditure. And you can do this with a lot of different calculators or apps. I'll put a link to one down below that you can check out. Now remember though, this is just an estimate to start with. You're gonna have to put this into practice and then see what the results are. So you would get your estimate, and then what I would recommend is doing a 10 to 20% reduction. Now we talked about this in a previous video about reducing metabolic adaptation and also for helping protecting muscle mass. You want to stick around this range. This is a healthy, sustainable range to stay at. And so you try this the first 1 to 2 weeks, see what results you get. If that's working well, you stick with it. If it's not, if you're not seeing any results, then you would cut down a little bit further. And this is what we do with all of our one-on-one clients currently, is we have a meal plan. We aim for this 10 to 20% reduction. Protein is your best friend for fat loss, and for several reasons. First of all, it's going to make you feel fuller and longer. So by having more protein in your diet, you're not going to be as hungry throughout the day. It's going to be way easier to maintain and stick on your low-calorie diet. Because when you cut calories, you're naturally going to be hungry all the time. So if you're eating a diet primarily full of carbs, it's going to be really hard to not cut back because you're just going to be super hungry. Whereas if you boost up the protein, it's going to help you feel fuller during the meal, and it's going to keep you fuller longer after the meal. It also protects and builds muscle. And this is extremely important when we're on a diet, we're cutting calories, because if we don't eat enough protein, we're going to lose a lot more muscle than we should. And especially as we get older, we want to keep as much of this muscle as we can because it's going to be a lot harder to build it back. And the more muscle we can keep, the higher metabolism is going to be, the better it's going to be for our overall physique, health, and fitness. And so what you want to aim for is around 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. Now, as a bonus, if you want to, at the beginning, eat protein and your fiber at the beginning of the meal before your carbs. This is going to help you feel fuller and help you reduce those calories and make it a lot easier. Gaining muscle mass makes everything easier when it comes to fat loss. So not only is it going to enhance your physique to give you a better looking body, it also is going to burn more fat without having to do anything. Just at rest, your body is going to require more calories when you have more muscle. And it's going to be crucial as you get older, because as you age, your body's going to naturally lose its muscle mass unless you're actively doing things to keep it and build it. So here's what you should do. I would start to incorporate resistance training by adding in 3 sessions. And you can do this with calisthenics or with weights, but using these movements. So a push movement, a pull movement, a squat, and a hinge. Start with those 4 movements at the beginning. This is just very basic, something simple, and you want to make sure you're hitting enough volume. So you want to hit around 3 to 4 sets and do about 10 to 15 rep range of that. You must make this a priority. I get it. You're busy, you have work, you have family obligations. There's a lot of things that are probably going on. And in other areas of your life, you probably have everything together. It's maybe just one area of cutting down this weight and getting your health back, because you probably sacrificed a lot of that either for your work and family, things like that. The problem is we think we're saving time by, not exercising or not putting into the diet. But what really happens is we end up losing more time in the end, meaning that our lifespan is going to be shorter. We won't have as much energy. And so everything else in our life will get better when we focus and make our diet and exercise a priority. So say no and set boundaries. One of the biggest obstacles that we see with our clients is that, family things come up, or friends that want to go out to eat. There's things with work where it's hard to eat healthy during lunch, or with family dinners and things like this. And you don't have to be rude about this, but try to plan ahead. Or let's say if you're going to lunch with coworkers and things like this, and everyone's grabbing a drink, grab a soda water instead of that beer. Instead of getting the burger, opt for the salad with a sauce on the side. Little things like this. And if someone offers you that slice of cake, say no occasionally. A little bit of slip-ups here and there is fine. But if you need to get the results, you're going to have to set those boundaries and say no sometimes. If you do this and really make this a priority, then there's nothing that's going to stop you from getting those results. You don't want a magic pill. Now, most people, you hear people say, if I could just have a magic pill, take it, all my weight goes away. That's what I want. And we kind of actually have that now. So, especially with Ozempic, which mimics GLP-1, basically it makes you feel full, you're not as hungry, it lowers your calories by doing that. You can lose weight with that. A lot of people can lose weight. Now, there's some problems, some side effects that can occur with it, which maybe I'll talk about later. And you also have gastric bypass. Technically, we do have things that kind of work like a magic pill, but the problem is this isn't going to fix the root problem. So if you're cutting calories, but you're not eating healthy food, you're still going to have health problems. Whenever these things stop working as well, or if you ever have to get off of them, you then don't have the skills, the habits, and things to function and lose weight or keep the weight off without it. So let me just give you a story. So my friend in high school, one of my friends, I'm not going to say who it was, but he cheated a lot during high school on all of his tests and stuff. But what happened is when he got to the SAT, where you can't cheat, he failed miserably. So that's what happened. It's kind of like the same story when you take the magic pill. It works, you can get by, and you can get the results you want, but once you don't have that, or once you get off of it, then you haven't developed any of the habits, so you have no habits for success, you haven't built the discipline, and you don't have the skills to actually do it. And these things are more important than the actual result. The things that you learn, the habit, the discipline, the skills that you learn by going through this weight loss journey, and then by keeping the weight off, those are more important than even the result, because that crosses over into everything else in your life. So you don't want the magic pill. Now, there are exceptions that I would say to this. Some people have medical reasons for this. Also, if you're, severely obese and you need a Kickstarter, you need something to just jumpstart everything, and you take something like this, but then you also add in the other things, building in the good habits, the discipline, the exercise, healthy foods, that can be a way that you can do this. But for most people, that's really hard to do, because once you get that magic pill, you just kind of relax, like, oh, I can, I don't have to worry as much about my exercise and things like this. And that's what happens for most people. They just become reliant on the magic pill and then never develop the other stuff that's so important. No matter what, keep moving. And this is something that I learned from Hilliard Jones. Now, Hilliard Jones came to learn parkour from us. But get this, he was in his 70s. And not only that, he was suffering from stage 4 lung cancer. So his wife brought him over, a surprise visit to come train with us. And so we trained Hilliard, and it was amazing. He was actually really good. He was very strong and agile for his age. We were doing vaults together and stuff. And so we developed a relationship at this point. He basically became a grandpa to us. We would go and see him for Christmas and things like this. And one of the things that we learned from him, because one day he was taking us to the Washington, D.C., one of the museums out there, and we asked him, you're going through this lung cancer, you have family and all this, how do you cope with all that? And what he told us is, what? Started thinking about that, but really it's all about just keep moving. Something comes up, I go on a run, I do this, I just keep moving, and that's all you can do at the end of the day. So that's my big lesson for you, is no matter what, you're going to feel like a failure sometimes. Things will suck. So no matter how many times you fail, just keep going, and eventually you're going to hit that goal. All right, so what do you do now? Well, I have a few things for you. The first thing is our free Primal Food Pyramid. So this is a really awesome ebook that gives you guidelines for your diet, and also some really cool recipes that you can start with. This is like an introduction into healthy primal foods. So basically, we're getting you off of the ultra processed foods and transitioning you into more whole foods, healthy diet. And you can get that absolutely free in the link in the description. Next I have for you is our Primal Abs course. So this is a paid program, but this is where we take the nutrition to the next level, where we introduce you to our intermittent fasting protocol. You also get core training. So each session is 9 minutes. And here we focus not only on building the abs, but all the other muscles of the core. So the transverse abdominis, the pelvic floor, and other ones that most people don't really think about. Because our goal here is to get you functionally strong, not just for looks, but also so you can use it in other activities and moving better without pain. Then if you're really serious, then I'll also put a link to our Primal coaching. So this is for people that want to take it to the next level. You've tried a lot of things. You're really serious about getting results. That's where you jump on a call with either me or a member of our team. We'll talk with you about your goals and then see if our coaching is a good fit, where we set up a custom plan, a custom meal plan, and then we hold you accountable each week, making sure you hit those goals. All right, so thanks again for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, then check out this one right here.